What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Sixers Digest YouTube channel. My name is Sean Barnard, as always, and today we'll be breaking down a new interesting report regarding the Sixers and their potential future plans that may go deeper than just this season. So while we were lost in the James Harden whirlwind and what goes on now, the Sixers have their eye on the prize down the line. So I'm excited to dive into that, what that means for the team. But before I get fully into it, I would like to recommend that you guys are hitting that subscribe button. That 93% of you guys watching have not subscribed to the channel yet. We got a bunch of big plans for the Sixers season. That's about right around the corner, about to be up in full swing, and we're going to be here every step of the way. So make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, ringing that bell, and sticking along for the journey. I'm starting to get the juices back for the season. That as much as it's been a frustrating time, as much as there's been plenty of headaches over the past couple years extended, I'm ready to be bought back in. I'm starting to feel optimistic about the way this season could possibly go. So for starters, let's look a little beyond the season and dive into this report from Brian Windhorst here. Windhorst says, quote, Philadelphia right now has positioned itself to be a big free agent player. I guess Philadelphia could swoop in and go after Paul George or Kawhi. That would, of course, all be next offseason, as both of those players are in the last year of their contract, and there's a lot of uncertainty for what's going on with the Clippers. This also ties into a plan that has been looming around for most of this offseason, has been discussed pretty openly by Daryl Morey about keeping some free agent money available and getting as much cap space as possible. And I'll pull up this tweet here. Shout out RB Philly Take, one of the true GOATs in the Sixers coverage game. But RB Philly Take tweeted this out a little bit ago. This is coming from Daryl Morey's interview on 97.5 The Fanatic. And RB said, Daryl Morey says that bringing back a lot of the depth that has been lost, quote, would have hurt this team down the road. Says he wants to win this year, but also a ton of cap space next year and to be competitive for years to come. So it's very clear that Daryl Morey is not just zeroed in on this year as the all-in year to win. While that is a little bit concerning to me just because Joel Embiid is the face of this franchise, and we know that one wrong step and all of a sudden the window changes drastically. That if there is no Joel Embiid, there is no championship window, and I feel it's very important to maximize every single year of his career based on the fragility of him and of players of his general archetype, that when an injury does happen, if a knee injury does occur, that could drastically change the trajectory of his career and this franchise. So I do think it's important to strike when the iron's hot from that regard. But with that being said, you can't make something out of nothing, and if the roster just genuinely is not there and there is not a way to get it to a championship level, I understand taking this hard approach. Now, here's a list of some of the possible free agents that will be available next offseason. There is, of course, Kawhi, Paul George, LeBron James, Pascal Siakam, James Harden, Cameron Payne, Drew Holiday, DeMar DeRozan, and Klay Thompson. Not really sure how Cameron Payne made that list here, but, whatever. Shout out Cameron Payne. But those are some legitimate options as far as free agent goes. I guess what I keep circling back to and why I have the biggest issue with this plan is stars just don't leave in free agents anymore. It just doesn't happen. It's so much more common to see things like the Dame Lillard situation where he's actively forcing his way out of Portland. This guy signed an extension last offseason, and the franchise is still kind of holding him, making sure they're getting value on the deal. Now, the reasoning for that, this works for both the players and the teams. For starters, the NBA has tried to put in place basically rewards for players for sticking with their team, putting in some loyalty by allowing them to sign bigger contracts. We've seen this with Dame Lillard. We've seen this with Bradley Beal. We just saw this with Jaylen Brown, that you can sign a larger contract when it is with your own team, that when you are re-signing with your team. So players obviously want the best money possible, that they enjoy doing that to get the maximum contract. Now, from the team's perspective, it also kind of works out in this situation that you're willing to give that guy that massive deal, even if you're not sure he's going to play out the length of that contract, because that means rather than that player just leaving in free agency and you getting nothing in return, that at least you can make a trade and get assets back for him. So there is a little bit of give and take there, and this is kind of why the NBA is in a tough spot when it comes to the leverage, is that it does work for both sides for players to sign these long-term expensive contracts and then to be traded by teams. So that's kind of where the root of the issue is and why we're seeing a lot of the problems that we have today. But nonetheless, for this specific situation, it has not resulted in these star-level players leaking out to the free agent market, that they're much more likely to leave by this. And in addition to that, each of these free agent possibilities have to want to sign in Philadelphia. And if we're going to be straight up honest with ourselves, that just has not happened. I mean, you look at the Sixers' past history, you can extend this decades at this point, and the biggest free agent signing that we've had is Al Horford, who obviously did not work and did not want to be here, and it took overpaying for him significantly for him to come to Philadelphia. Even a Jimmy Butler, that was via trade. James Harden via trade. All these stars, it has to give up something. There's honestly an argument to be made that there's more of an asset to having a contract like James Harden or like Tobias Harris on your books, so you can at least flip that for something with other things to get a player. but that's clearly the plan by Daryl Morey to put as much cap space as possible. And I want to pull up here just looking at some of the contracts on the Sixers. If I can get this here. This is a little zoomed out view. Sorry, it is a little bit hard to see. But the point of this being that you can see the year-by-year contracts as how much is set to come off the books this year. Really, it's going to be Joel Embiid and Paul Reed as the only two players really set to be on roster for sure. Tyrese Maxey is, of course, expected to sign an extension. There was a little loophole in the CBA that benefited the Sixers from a cap space perspective if they did that extension next offseason rather than this offseason. So that is the game plan there. I believe there's a blank check for Maxey, and there absolutely should be. But when you look at this kind of breakdown, that's why Daryl Morey is going for these one-year contracts, signing the Patrick Beverleys, the Danny Greens, the Mo Bambas, the Montrezl Harrell. By having the one-year deal, that ensures that it will come off the books next year and that it creates the most flexibility for the team to possibly have. So we know that Joel Embiid is a long-term part of this franchise. They did pony up and match the Paul Reed offer. However, it should be noted that there's a clause in there that the Sixers have to get past the second round for this to come fully guaranteed. So we might be doing the same song and dance with Paul Reed next offseason if that does not happen. A little bit of a trick move by the Jazz to kind of put that in place there. But obviously the Sixers wanted him as a significant part of the organization, and they should, that he's going to be a key part of the Nick Nurse system, of the impact that is made. Now, as far as the free agent plan as a whole, we know that Joel Embiid for now is staying patient. The biggest risk that I think is run here is if this just does not work. What if no free agent wants to come to the Sixers? What if no free agent wants to join forces with Joel Embiid? I know we've seen some rumors of him potentially interested in playing in the Olympics, potentially interested in that, but it's not like Joel Embiid has this expansive network of basketball players that he's friends with. He works out with Jason Tatum. He knows a lot of the Drew Hanlen guys. That's probably his best kind of recruiting tool at this point, is having those connections, but he's not a guy who's actively there, in the super team mix, talking to guys. He's not Draymond Green. That's all that these socialite events, friends with LeBron, all these things. I just don't see Joel Embiid attracting other guys in the way that I would like for him to, and the way that I think a lot of stars naturally do. And I can't quite put my finger on why. I don't think it's play style. I think generally guys like to play with Embiid. I think his defensive impact jumps out to guys on the team much more than the general public gives him credit for. That I think, for example, a guy like James Harden, who can basically slack up on defense in the way that he desires to and generally has for most of his career, he's got a guy like Joel Embiid behind him to cover his tracks and still make sure that these Sixers are an adequate and above average defensive team. I do think that's appealing. I will say some of the isolation tendencies, some of the ball-dominant tendencies could rub guys the wrong way, but I'm curious how much that changes this year with the Nick Nurse system. That I do genuinely believe a lot of those issues were with Doc Rivers, that so much of the playbook was give it to Joel Embiid the elbow and everybody else watch. I don't think we're going to see nearly as much of that this year. So maybe this is a year where things go right, where we start to see a system put in place. We start to see a different version of Joel Embiid on the court, which I think everyone's excited to see a little different look at. We know he's the MVP. We know he has all the talent in the world. But when it comes to converting that talent to maximizing winning, that's something that I would like to see strides in this year. So it's a big season for these Sixers, and I think a lot of the work is going to be legwork for the next year. That there has to be proving that there's a system in place. We can find guys that can take this team to the next level, and it is unfortunate that this is almost the gap year, the burn year, the waste year, however you want to word it, but this could be the ultimate route to a championship in the way the team desires. This is an interesting outlook. I appreciate the clarity from Brian Windhorst. It does make this year a little more frustrating if this is the case, but nonetheless, we do have to see the long-term vision. From here, we will see how things play out. Training camp right around the corner now, sneaking right up on us. I do think how James Harden acts, and I just recently dropped a video on that, speaking on that specifically, will dictate the Sixers' future moves in a massive way. But for now, we can just sit and wait and see what happens from there. Appreciate you guys for tuning into this video. Thanks so much for watching, and make sure you guys are keeping along. Reminder to hit that subscribe button, ring that bell so you're not missing out on any content, and I'll talk with you next time here on Sixers Digest. Peace.